Okay, so how does a company accidentally build a business that's worth over $100 billion a year? Today, we're going to unpack the incredible origin story of Amazon Web Services, a tech giant that wasn't born from some grand vision, nope, but from total internal chaos. Seriously, just think about that for a second. How do you just stumble into creating a business that pulls in over $100 billion a year? I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie, right? But it's the very real, almost unbelievable story of how AWS got its start. Yeah, it's a story I love to call the accidental giant. We're going to see how AWS went from being just a messy internal fix into the digital foundation that so many of us rely on every single day, often without even having a clue that we're using it. All right, let's just try to wrap our heads around the scale here. We're talking about $100 billion. That's the kind of money AWS is making annually. And here's the kicker, get this, it's not some little side hustle for Amazon. AWS is now more profitable than Amazon's entire global retail business, combined. Just let that sink in for a moment.
So what even is AWS? Well, the simplest way to think about it is like your power company. You don't go out and build your own power plant just to turn on the lights in your house, right? Of course not. You just plug into the grid. AWS lets companies do the exact same thing, but for their computing power and data storage.
So where did this revolutionary idea come from? You'd think it came from some visionary genius trying to invent the future. But nope, not even close. It came from pure, unfiltered chaos happening right inside Amazon. So picture this. It's the early 2000s. Amazon is just exploding. They're growing like crazy. But behind the curtain, their own technology was creaking and groaning under the strain. Their internal infrastructure was becoming this massive bottleneck, slowing everything and everyone down. And here was the core problem. Teams were constantly reinventing the wheel, over and over again. Imagine you're an engineer there back then. For every single new feature you want to build, you have to create the entire infrastructure from scratch. Databases, storage, the whole shebang. It was incredibly inefficient, unbelievably slow, and the costs were just spiraling out of control. So, this internal crisis, it actually forced a totally radical new way of thinking. They realized they needed to stop building all these countless little power plants and instead build one massive, centralized one just for data. And that was the big conceptual leap. The old way was like building a separate power plant for every single light bulb. It's just absurdly complex. The new idea? So simple. Build one giant, reliable grid that anyone could plug into and just pay for what they use. It was fast, it was simple, and it let the teams get back to focusing on what actually mattered. You know, the thinking here was just genius in its simplicity. Step one, fix our own agonizing problem. Let's build one standardized infrastructure for all our own teams. But then came that critical aha moment. It was actually laid out in a now famous 2003 paper by a couple of their engineers. They realized that the solution they built for themselves was something that every company desperately needed. And that's when they made that huge decision to turn it outward and sell it as a service to the world. And with that one decision, what started as a simple internal fix began its journey to becoming the very backbone of the modern internet. All of a sudden, new companies didn't need millions in venture capital just to buy servers and build data centers. Nope, they could just rent computing power from AWS. This is what allowed startups, companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and Reddit, to scale up so fast in a way that would have been absolutely impossible just a few years earlier. The result of all that is the market we see today. I mean, even with giants like Microsoft and Google throwing everything they have at cloud computing, AWS still holds the dominant share at 31%. That multi-year head start they had was everything. See, Amazon didn't just create a new product, they created the entire market. And the journey itself was just incredibly fast. The chaos gets identified in the early 2000s, the big ideas proposed in that paper in 2003, and the public launch happens in 2006. Think about that. In less than 2 decades, this thing went from an internal memo to the invisible foundation of the modern internet. And this brings us to a final, really thought-provoking idea. Was this all just a happy accident, or did it end up creating something a lot more complicated? This really is the ultimate irony. Amazon never set out to build the internet's infrastructure. They just wanted to solve an internal headache. But in doing so, they created this accidental monopoly, a service that is now so fundamental that much of our digital world simply cannot function without it. So we're left with this really critical question. The story of AWS is a masterclass in innovation, born from necessity for sure. But what happens when one company's accident becomes the essential, non negotiable foundation for everyone else? It's definitely something we're thinking about.